Hi, I'm Alex Archbold, and I've been buying and selling antiques since I was 9 years old. From basements to scrapyards, I'll look just about anywhere I can to find lost antiques and collectibles. And sometimes I'll go big and buy everything. With my wife and kids, we run an antique shop in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, filled with some of the most unique items we can find. I never know what's going to happen or who I'm going to meet. This is our life, this is our adventure, and this is Curiosity Inc.
I'm home, honey.
Hi guys, and welcome back. Well, on today's episode, I'm here at the shop. I'm working away, and a lady comes in with her husband, and they've got some collectibles that they've had since since she was a little girl. So we're going to look through some bags of collector dolls and some other items that have some good historic value and see exactly what I got in today's finds. Now, I don't normally deal in dolls, but boy, did I get a whole bunch of them in. My counter is completely full. That's why I thought, well, this is like the value of the dolls, because boy, I am just swamped with them. I didn't go through this collection yet. I was saving that to do here with you guys right now. I know that my knowledge on vintage and antique dolls is very limited, so I'm going to try and muddle my way through this, but we'll at least see what we have. And if you're watching and you know a little bit more about it, you can certainly write me and let me know what you think. So I guess we'll start at the top of the pile. Now, this looks like it's a Madame Alexander. New York, USA. There are that specific size and that type of quality with the, see her little eyes should close. Oh, maybe they're stuck. There we go. Opening and closing eyes. These were a nice quality doll. Very fine fabrics. This would date to probably the 1950s, I would say, mid to late 50s. And that was a good piece. So, you know, if there's more of these, I'll be happy, because a lot of dolls, especially modern ones, don't hold a lot of value. But a vintage doll like this Madame Alexander, in fact, does. So I will separate the Madame Alexanders, I guess, out in this area as we get them, and we'll see just how many we come across. That's a good find for right off the bat. There's also, you know, perhaps dolls like this that are wooden. Might have been picked up on vacation. That's pretty bad when you're a doll made out of wood and you're missing your foot. Like, I assume that's not a peg leg, you know, it's not a pirate doll. But what do you get as a replacement leg when you're already made out of wood? I'll put that over in its own little area here in the probably not as collectible but somewhat cool pile. And what I want to do is just get to the dolls that have probably the most interest or the most value. Okay, that almost looks like a Carmen Miranda kind of hat with the bananas and everything. That is not a Madame Alexander, but that is a vintage doll. I think her head is in fact on backwards. There we go. We get her turned around the right way. But that's a pretty little piece, and her eyes open and close too. Don't think it's a Madame Alexander. It might be. I'm gonna check the back and see. It is not a Madame Alexander from what I can tell. It's just sort of a lighter weight, not as fine of a build as the others, but still interesting little piece. And these are probably, I would say, about 8 inches tall or so, 9 inches tall. They're, you know, not Barbie size, a little bit less than. Let's go around and see what else there is. And here's a little funny set. Hey, maybe that's me and Melissa in a few years. I do have a sore back, and it looks like he's kind of holding his back. That's funny that they carved this so that he's actually kind of twiddling along with his hand behind, like he's maybe got a stiff back. Nice detail in the carving though. Kind of a fun little folk art piece. And when you get into folk art like that, that is kind of, you know, it's not mass produced. Those are probably the only ones just like it, but that would have been probably sold to tourists over in Europe at some point, maybe like Holland or who knows. But interesting. I'll put that over with the other little wooden dolls. Maybe this is their one-legged child. We'll put them together. Okay, and here is, it's another Madame Alexander doll. Oh no. Her leg has come unhooked. I think that's probably a pretty easy fix, but she's all there. That's sad. There are doll hospitals, if you can believe it, places you can send dolls in to get them repaired. I think I can probably get that fixed myself. Either that or else she'll just have one leg that's a lot longer than the other. She'll have to get special orthotic shoes. But 2 Madame Alexander so far. There was just a massive amount of different sorts of dolls. And as I'm going through, there's things like this little Bobby. I don't know, look at his gloves. They look like he's wearing socks on his hands. Ever since the accident, I have had to wear mittens over my hands, but yet he's kept his job. What a stoic gentleman. There's lots of other little collectibles that we're going to go through too. When we were looking at the Madame Alexander dolls, I ended up with getting quite a few of them actually. So there's 2, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. There's 12 of them. And overall, the condition is really, really good. It looks like they were collecting dolls from around the world, different series that they had. But things like the little tiny shoes that go on and off are there. The little baskets are there. The hats are there. All these little accessories are still intact. And that's really remarkable. I was also surprised to see, even though that they were, you know, maybe not the same quality as a Madame Alexander, there was, you know, a Pilgrim. I think that's George and Martha Washington. Much younger looking than I imagine. And these are little Girl Scout and Sprite dolls. 1965 is dated on the back, and just really, really good condition, again, with the shoes and everything intact there too. Now, although some Madame Alexander dolls from the 1950s and 60s can go for several $100s or more, these 7.5-inch figures like this will probably range in the $35 to $50 Canadian mark each. Being in such good condition, they'll probably be at the higher end of that scale, other than the doll that has a loose leg, unless I can fix it. She'll be on discount because she's defective. And sometimes you can get some information off of where an item was made by looking at the box. These little dolls, let's see, it says, I come from Lancaster County, way where Amish work and play. So these are made in Pennsylvania, I guess. Little dolls there. You get an idea about where they're made. The craft shop. Oh, they're made, not to be a 7-year-old child, but they're made in Intercourse, PA, which is a real place. Of course, I'm not making that up. If you're from there, you're like, okay, we've had enough of the jokes already. But yes, so those little dolls come from Pennsylvania. And it wasn't just dolls that were in with this batch of collectibles. As a young lady, she collected pins from artists that she admired. Look, there's an early Beatles pin. Original 1960s. Looks like she was a Neil Young fan. Of course, Canadian rock icon. We've got the Grateful Dead. And these all look to be from the vintage. You know, these aren't modern replicas. These are all pins that are from around that time. Look, Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young. Too bad there weren't rock concert posters, but early pins like this can be quite collectible too. So that's a good little find even right there. Okay, and we're going to see what's inside of this box. It appears to be, well, that's made out of wood. Looks like it's been in here for a while. Oh, it's cast iron. It looks like parts of a miniature cast iron stove. I'll see if I can assemble it and show you guys what it looks like all finished. Okay, so inside that box, those assembled pieces turned into a little stove, cast iron stove, which is kind of neat. I don't know exactly what scale that would be, but it's probably appropriate for those dolls, like 7.5-inch doll would look about right there. And there was even a tiny little general store scale. Look at that. And here we are inside an antique general store, and I've got this miniature little scale here that you could weigh, you know, your breads or candies or whatever on. Oh, those are kind of fun pieces, and I'm showing you all assembled, but it actually wasn't easy putting that together because some things were out of alignment, but it's all together now. You might be asking yourself, Alex, why are you buying dolls? That's not something you normally carry. You don't know anything about it. Well, part of the reason I bought this collection of dolls, one, they're the right age. 1950s and 60s, that wasn't really mass produced. They're pretty collectible. But the second part is it came with some documents that really only came if I bought the whole thing, and I'll show you what they are. One piece that was kind of cool was this letter right here. Now, it's framed. She told me that this was a letter given to her dad, that her family had actually thrown it away after he'd passed, and she pulled it out of the dumpster. Glad she did, because as you can see, it's Opto Mechanisms, Inc., dated 1969. And it says, Dear Walter, it gives me a great deal of personal pleasure to award this medallion to you on behalf of the Apollo 8 astronauts.
This commemorative medallion contains metal that was aboard the Apollo 8 spacecraft on man's first journey around the moon. Opto-mechanisms designed and delivered to the Boeing company, and operational spaceborne fiber optics image-enhanced optical subsystem. So essentially, what he did is he created some technology that was used on the spacecraft, and as a thanks, they sent him, and there's a letter, Robert Schneider sent him this little coin here, dated 1968, the Apollo 8 astronauts on it, made of metal from the actual Apollo 8 shuttle. How cool is that? And I think that ended up in the dumpster. This is the kind of stuff that I get excited about. But more than that, there's something else that was neat too. The other thing that was cool, not just this probably teens or 20s bank bag, which I thought was super neat, is what was inside of it. There are a ton of original letters from the Pony Express dating back as far as the 1840s. And these would have been stamped and sealed. Some of them still have the wax from the seal so that you knew that they hadn't been opened or seen. And these come from a fellow named George Johnson. Now there was a George Johnson who later became governor of Kentucky. I don't think it's the same guy, but reading some of the letters, they talk about cotton. So bill of lading for cotton, 120 cotton. I can't quite make out what that word is there. And number 2, containing of cotton and of linen, which have been shipped by that person there, and a Captain Spencer to your order of instruction. And you can try and, you know, make out some of what this history was and who these people were. This is from a ledger's office, and you can see these are kind of coming back and forth between Liverpool and New York. So there's Liverpool for some March, and that actually is 1857 or 51, I think, is what it's stamped. But how neat! And that made its way through Pawtucket, Rhode Island on June 14th. And then here's one into Boston. And so these are delivery of supplies, and this is, you know, all right around the time of the Civil War, so it's really, really early stuff. And then one of the last ones we have is dated 1871 from Havana. Well, I'm curious to know, you know, who these people were. Edward Faulkner, Esquire, 44 Walker Street, New York. Now, you could probably look up what these houses look like and what they were for, but how neat is that these little bits of, you know, these little treasures have survived all this time in these little bags, and, you know, a piece of the Apollo 8 shuttle thrown in the dumpster. I'm just thrilled and amazed to find little bits like this coming through the store. This letter here is dated Charlestown, August 22nd, almost looks like they wrote 23. But it says, "Gentlemen, we are very much in want of the balance of order by Mr. Lawrence, Esquire, I think. Figures for couch backs, perhaps. 32-inch by 19. If you have not the whole of them finished, you would oblige us very much to send what you may have finished without the least possible delay." Basically, nowadays you'd send a text and it would just say, you know, "Where's our stuff?" and a frowny face emoji. They were so much more graceful back then. But, you know, interesting part of our history. And some of this may have been, you know, perhaps production of products, or who knows. It's just a part of our past that I'll have to spend a little bit more time researching. So from a collection of dolls to a piece of the Apollo 8 space shuttle, you just really never know what's going to walk in your doors. So thanks so much for watching this week's episode. Stay tuned for more as we continue on, and I hope you have a wonderful day, and we'll see y'all soon. Bye for now.